Good afternoon. Today I'm going to read the third part of the section entitled The Magician in the Red Book by C.G. Jung, Reader's Edition. So I'm on page 417. I'll be reading to page 423 today. Where is truth and faith? Where is warm trust? You find all this between men, but not between men and serpents, even if they are serpent souls. But wherever there is love, the serpent-like abides also. Christ himself compared himself to a serpent, and his hellish brother, the Antichrist, is the old dragon himself. What is beyond the human that appears in love has the nature of the serpent and the bird, and the serpent often enchants the bird, and more rarely the bird bears off the serpent. Man stands in between. What seems like a bird to you is a serpent to the other, and what seems like a serpent to you is a bird to the other. Therefore, you will meet the other only in human form. If you want to become, then a battle between bird and serpent takes place. If you want to become, then a battle between bird and serpent breaks out. And if you only want to be, you will be a man to yourself and to others. He who is becoming belongs in the desert or in a prison, for he is beyond the human. If men want to become, they behave like animals. No one saves us from the evil of becoming unless we choose to go through hell. Why did I behave as if that serpent were my soul? Only, it seems, because my soul was a serpent. This knowledge gave my soul a new face, and I decided henceforth to enchant her myself and subject her to my power. Serpents are wise, and I wanted my serpent soul to communicate her wisdom to me. Never before had life been so doubtful, a night of aimless tension, being one in being directed against one another. Nothing moved, neither God nor the devil, so I approached the serpent that lay in the sun, as if she were unthinking. Her eyes were not visible, since they blinked in the shimmering sunshine. And then he wants us to look at this image, so I'm going to give you the image. And I spoke to her. How will it be now that God and the devil have become one? Are they in agreement to bring life to a standstill? Does the conflict of opposites belong to the inescapable conditions of life? And does he who recognizes and lives the unity of opposites stand still? He has completely taken the side of actual life, and he no longer acts as if he belonged to one party and had to battle against the other, but he is both and has brought their discord to an end. Through taking his burden from life, has he also taken the force from it? The serpent turned and spoke ill-humoredly. The serpent turned and spoke ill-humoredly. Truly, you pester me. Opposites were certainly an element of life for me. You probably will have noticed this. Your innovations deprive me of this source of power. I can neither lure you with pathos nor annoy you with banality. I am somewhat baffled. If you are baffled, should I give counsel? I would rather you dive down to the deeper grounds to which you have entry and ask Hades or the heavenly ones, Perhaps someone there can give a counsel. Soul, you have become imperious. I, necessity is even more imperious than I. I must live and be able to move. Soul, you have the whole wide earth. What do you want to ask the beyond for? I, it isn't curiosity that drives me, but necessity. I will not yield. Soul, I obey, but reluctantly. This style is new and unaccustomed for me. I'm sorry, but there is pressing need. Tell the depths that prospects are not looking too good for us because we have cut off an important organ from life. And as you know, I'm not the guilty one, since you have led me carefully along this way. Soul, you might have rejected the apple. I, enough of these jokes. You know that story better than I do. I am serious. I need some air. Be on your way and fetch the fire. Be on your way and fetch the fire. It has already been dark around me for too long. Are you sluggish or cowardly? Soul, I'm off to work. Take from me what I bring up. Slowly, the throne of God ascends into empty space, followed by the Holy Trinity, all of heaven, and finally Satan himself. He resists and clings to his beyond. He will not let it go. The upper world is too chilly for him. Soul, have you got tight hold of him? I, welcome, hot thing of darkness. My soul probably pulled you up roughly. Soul, why this noise? I protest against this violent extraction. Calm down. I didn't expect you. You come last of all. You seem to be the hardest part. Soul, what do you want from me? I don't need you, impertinent fellow. It's a good thing it's a good thing we have you. He's talking about Satan here. It's a good thing we have you. You're the liveliest thing in the whole dogma. Satan, soul, what concern is your prattle to me? Make it quick, I'm freezing. Listen, something has just happened to us. We have united the opposites. Among other things, we have bonded you with God. Soul, for God's sake, why this hopeless fuss? Why such nonsense? Please, that wasn't so stupid. This unification is an important principle. We have put a stop to never-ending quarreling, to finally free our hands for real life. Soul, this smells like monism. I have already made note of some of these men. Special chambers have been heated for them. So I guess at this point, the S here has changed from his soul to Satan, just for clarification. So this would be Satan. The smells of monism. I have already made note of some of these men. Special chambers have been heated for them. You're mistaken. Matters are not as rational with us as they seem to be. We have no single correct truth either. Rather, a most remarkable and strange fact has occurred after the opposites have been united. Quite unexpectedly and incomprehensibly, nothing further happened. Everything remained in place, peacefully and yet completely motionless, and life turned into a complete standstill. Satan, yes, you fools, you certainly have made a pretty mess of things. Well, your mockery is unnecessary. Our intentions were serious. Satan, your seriousness leads us to suffer. The ordering of the beyond is shaken to its foundations. So you realize that matters are serious. I want an answer to my question. What should happen under these circumstances? We no longer know what to do. Satan. Well, it is hard to know what to do and difficult to give advice, even if one would like to give it. You are blinded fools, a brashly impertinent people. Why didn't you stay out of trouble? How do you mean to understand the ordering of the world? I. Your ranting suggests you are quite thoroughly aggrieved. Look, the Holy Trinity is taking things coolly. I it seems not it seems not to dislike the innovation. Satan. Ah, the Trinity is so irrational that one can never trust its reactions. I strongly advise you not to take those symbols seriously. I. I thank you for this well meant advice, but you seem to be interested. One would expect you to pass unbiased judgment on account of your proverbial intelligence. Satan. Me, unbiased? You can judge for yourself. If you consider this absoluteness in its completely lifeless equanimity, you can easily discover that the state and standstill produced by your presumptuousness closely resembles the absolute. But if I counsel you, I place myself completely on your side, since you too find the standstill unbearable. I. What? You take my side? That is strange. Satan. That's not so strange. The absolute was always adverse to the living. I am still the real master of life. I. That is suspicious. Your reaction is far too personal. Satan. My reaction is far from personal. I am utterly restless, quickly hurrying life. I am never contented, never prejudiced, never unperturbed. I pull everything down and hastily build. I am ambition, greed for fame, lust for action. I am the fizz of new thoughts and action. The absolute is boring and negative. I. All right, I believe you. So just what do you advise? So just what do you advise? Satan. The best advice I can give you is revoke your completely harmful innovation as soon as possible. I. What would be gained by that? We'd have to start from scratch again and would infallibly reach the same conclusions a second time. What one has grasped once, one cannot intentionally let go. One cannot know again and undo. Your counsel is no counsel. Satan. But could you exist without divisiveness and disunity? You have to get worked up about something, represent a party, overcome opposites if you want to live. I. That does not help. We also see each other in the opposite. I have grown tired of this game. Satan. And so with life. I. It seems to me that it depends on what you call life. Your notion of life has to do with climbing up and tearing down, with assertion and doubt, with impatient dragging along, with hasty desire. You lack the absolute and its forbearing patience. Satan. Quite right. My life bubbles and foams and stirs up turbulent waves. It consists of seizing and throwing away ardent wishing and restlessness. That is life, isn't it? And he wanted me to share another image, so let me see if I have that one. I might. No, I guess not. Sorry. I'm going to leave that for now. I. But the absolute also lives. Satan. That is no life. It is a standstill, or as good as a standstill. Or rather, it lives interminably slowly and wastes thousands of years, just like the miserable conditions that you have created. You enlighten me, your personal life, but the apparent standstill is the forbearing life of eternity, the life of divinity. Thus, this time you have counseled as This time you have counseled me, I will let you go, farewell. Satan crawls deftly like a mole back into his hole again. The symbol of the Trinity and its entourage rise up in peace and equanimity in heaven. The symbol of the Trinity and its entourage rise up in peace and equanimity in heaven. I thank you, serpent, for I thank you, serpent, for hauling up the right one for me. Everyone understands his words since they are personal. We can live again a long life. We can waste thousands of years. Okay, so that's the extent of where I wanted to read today. I'll now go back and take a look for footnotes. There's a couple of fairly long ones here. Yaboy says, was it true C.G. Jung was very neurotic when writing the Red Book? And do you think he went temporarily mad, or did he do it on purpose to explore his creativity? Sorry for the long question. I don't think he went mad. I think at that point in time, between Jung and Freud and other people who were thinking of them as psychologists, there was doubt and misunderstanding of what madness was. And so I think he was not sure whether he was on the way to a psychosis or not. We're all, in some sense, neurotic. That's what this reading has been about the opposites and so on. So we all have opposites within us. Some of us are well adapted to those opposites, and some are not. And it's a matter of degree. Now, basically, Dr. Jung was a practicing psychiatrist when he went through these Red Book experiences. And so, I don't think he was suffering particularly from a neurosis here. But, other people have said that they thought he was mad or near psychosis. And, who am I to say? I'm not a mental health professional, so I'm not going to pine on that one. Okay, so reading the footnotes here. So the text reads, Christ himself compared himself to a serpent. And the footnote reads, Jung commented on the comparison of Christ with the serpent in Transformations and Symbols of the Libido, 1912. That's Collected Works 5, I believe, section 585. And in Ion, Collected Works 9.2, paragraph 291. And the text goes on, and his hellish brother, the Antichrist, is the old dragon himself. And that statement is mentioned in Transformations and Symbols of the Libido, 1912. And it's paragraph 585. Now, keep in mind that there are two versions of that book. There's a book in English named Psychology of the Unconscious, and 40 years later, it was redone by Dr. Jung with a huge addition of material as transformations and symbols of the libido. And so I think it's the earlier version that's being referred to here, but I don't think that the paragraph numbers have changed. So the paragraph number is 585. Okay, going on. Let me give you this image back, because this is going to be a discussion of this image, apparently. Okay, so there's a footnote on this image number, and the legend reads, 9 January 1927, my friend Herman Sigg died, age 52. That's what it says at the bottom. Jung described this as a luminous flower in the center with stars rotating about it. Around the flower, walls with 8 gates. The whole conceived as a transparent window. This mandala was based on a dream noted on January 2nd, 1927. I believe this is the Liverpool dream. From the town map that Jung drew, the relation between the dream and the painting is clear. He anonymously reproduced this in 1930 in commentary to The Secret of the Golden Flower, from which this description is taken. He reproduced it again in 1952 and added the following commentary, quote, "The rose in the center is depicted as a ruby, its outer ring being conceived as a wheel or a wall with gates, so that nothing can come out from inside or go in from outside. The mandala was a spontaneous product from the analysis of a male patient. After narrating the dream, Jung added, the dreamer went on. I tried to paint this dream, but as so often happens, it came out rather different. The magnolia turned into a sort of rose made of ruby colored glass. It shone like a 4-rayed star. The square represents the wall of the park, and at the same time a street leading round the park in a square. From it there radiate 8 main streets, and from each of these 8 side streets, which meet in a shining and central point, rather like the Étoile in Paris. The acquaintance mentioned in the dream lived in a house at the corner of one of these stars. The mandala thus combines the classic motifs of flower, star, circle, precinct, temenos, and plan of a city divided into quarters with citadel. The whole thing seemed like a window open onto eternity, wrote the dreamer. Then in parentheses, concerning mandala symbolism, see Collected Works 1, paragraphs 654 and 655. In 1955-56, he used the same expression to denote the illustration of the self. Mysterium Conjunctionis, Collected Works 14, paragraph 763. On October 7th, 1932, Jung showed this mandala in a seminar and commented on it the next day. In this account, he states that the painting of the mandala preceded the dream. Okay, the painting of the mandala preceded the dream. You remember possibly the picture that I showed you last evening, the central stone and the little jewels round it. It is perhaps interesting if I tell you about the dream in connection with it. I was the perpetrator of that mandala at a time when I had not the slightest idea what a mandala was, and in my extreme modesty, I thought, I am the jewel in the center, and those little lights are surely very nice people who believe that they are also jewels, but smaller ones. I think very well of myself, and I was able to express myself that, like that my marvelous center here, and I am right in my heart. He added that at first, he did not. Okay, he added that at first he did not recognize that the park was the same as the mandala which he had painted, and commented, now Liverpool is the center of life. Liver is the center of life. And I am not the center. I am the fool who lives in a dark place somewhere. I am one of those little sidelights. In the way, in the way, in that way, my Western prejudice that I was the center of the mandala was corrected, that I am everything in the whole story, the king, the god. Okay. And then there's a text here. I'm going to take this share away. Okay, then there's a text here. Through taking this burden from life, has he also taken the force from it? And then the footnote reads, the Black Book also has, I lay these questions before you today, my soul. Here the serpent is substituted for the soul. And then later on, there's a footnote at the beginning of a paragraph which reads like this. You might have rejected the apple. And the footnote reads, you're playing Adam and Eve with me. Then on the next page, on page 420, the text reads, I'm off to work. Take from me what I bring up. And the footnote reads, Jung's marginal note to the calligraphic volume, Visio. And then the text reads, have you got tight hold of him? And the footnote reads, Satan crawls out of the dark hole with horns and a tail. I pulled him out by the hands. And then number 302, why this noise? Excuse me. Why this noise? I protest against this violent extraction. And the footnote reads, the interlocutor is Satan. And then there's a statement, it's a good thing we have you. You're the liveliest thing in the whole dogma. The footnote reads, for Jung's account of the significance of Satan, see Answer to Job, Collected Works 11. And then a final sentence on this page. Listen, something has just happened to us. We have united the opposites, and among other things, we have bonded you with God. And the footnote reads, Jung discussed the issue of uniting the opposites as at length in psychological types. And then on page 421, rather a most remarkable and strange fact has occurred. After the opposites had been united quite unexpectedly and incomprehensibly, nothing further happened. And the footnote reads, Black Book 4 has instead this sentence: masters are not as intellectual and generally ethical with us as in monism. The reference is to Ernst Haeckel's system of monism, which Jung was critical of. And then the text reads, I strongly advise you not to take those symbols seriously. The footnote reads, attempt at a psychological interpretation of the dogma of the Trinity. Okay, so it was the attempt at a psychological interpretation. Okay, there's at least one more footnote. And this is referring to the Liverpool image again. So let me, I do not have this image. But what he says is, when I painted this image, which showed the golden well fortified, oh, wait a minute, maybe I do have this image. Just a moment. Now I know what it's talking about. And obviously you probably have noticed that this is hypnotizing me again. And so I'm having these little doze moments. It's kind of embarrassing, but nonetheless, that's the way it is. Okay, where is this image? Okay, the image she's talking about is, here it is. Okay, I've got it. Okay, here it is. All right. So the text reads, your notion of life has to do with climbing up and tearing down, with assertion and doubt, with impatient dragging around. And then there is this image, and the footnote reads, Image legend, 1928. When I painted this image, which showed the Golden Well fortified castle, Richard Wilhelm sent me from Frankfurt the Chinese 1,000-year-old text of the Golden Castle, the embryo of the immortal body, Ecclesia Catholic et Protestantis et Seclusi in Secreto and Finitus. And the translation is the Catholic Church and the Protestants and those secluded in secret, the end of an eon. Jung described this as a mandala. Jung described this as a mandala, as a fortified city with wall and moat. Within a broad moat surrounding a wall, fortified with 16 towers and with another inner moat. This moat encloses a central castle with gold roofs, whose center is a golden temple. He anonymously reproduced this in 1930 in Commentary on the Secret of the Golden Flower, from which this description is taken. He reproduced it again in 1952 in Concerning Mandala Symbolism, and again the following commentary, quote, painting of a medieval city with walls and moats, streets and churches arranged quadratically. The inner city is again surrounded by walls and moats like the imperial city in Beijing. The buildings all open inward toward the center, represented by a castle with a golden roof. It too is surrounded by a moat. The ground round the castle is laid with black and white tiles, representing the united opposites. This mandala was done by a middle-aged man. A picture like this is unknown in Chinese symbolism. The heavenly Jerusalem of Revelation is known to everybody. Coming to the Indian world of ideas, we find the city of Brahma on the world mountain, Meru. We read in the Golden Flower, the book of the Yellow Castle says, quote, in the square inch field of the square foot house, life can be regulated. The square foot house is the face, the square inch field in the face, which could that be other than the heavenly heart? In the middle of the square inch dwells the splendor. In the purple hall of the city of jade dwells the God of utmost emptiness and life. The Taoists call this center the land of ancestors or golden castle. Collected Works 9.1, section 691. On this mandala, see John Peck, the Visiodorate desert context, imperial setting, later alignment studies in the dreams and visions of Saint Pachamios and Dorotheus, son of Quintus, thesis, C.G. Jung Institute, Zurich, 1992, pages 183 through 85. Now, I will just mention, because it so happens that I do know something about the square inch and the square foot. In Chinese ideas, the square inch actually relates to the vagina. And there are several books written on this, and there's a lot of reference to the square inch. And that's what it is. And so you can read the Red Book in this context. I think that Jung was not a Chinese scholar and wasn't aware of that. So he was trying to make do with something that he didn't really have the full information on. I have studied Chinese all my life. And was trained in Mandarin Chinese by the Marine Corps. And I've been to mainland China 3 times, and I've read many books about China and Chinese culture and so on. So I have to take the position that I know a little bit more, but maybe Nicholas knows a little more than I do. I don't know. I'm going to go back and look at your chats now, and then I'll draw this part 3 to a close. Now, Emblematic says, what was the innovation Satan was recommending we ditch? And I think that the innovation that he was recommending we ditch is the conjunctio between good and evil, because that means the end. If there's stasis because good and evil are combined in the conjunctio, then everything stops. So I think that's what he had in mind. And let's see. Ron Fun says he was no doubt a neurotic. How else would he offered such a deep insight into the function of mental illness? He overcame those troubles only by which process could he uncover their structure. Well, I mean, I do agree that all of us are neurotic at some level. And to the extent we are all neurotic, then yes, Dr. Jung was neurotic. Um, he also was a professional psychiatrist, so he knew well enough what neurosis was. And what he was concerned about was that maybe he was going further into a psychosis, which is an actual mental illness, or, it's not madness. Neurosis is something that we learn from, and we go through various neurotic stages in our development. But a psychosis is something where you don't have control. It's like a biological error type thing. And schizophrenia would be an example of that. And he was concerned that he might be having a schizophrenia attack, a schizoid attack, but obviously he came through it. And in retrospect, I mean, he never really mentions that or that concern later on. And so I think that he just recognized that he wasn't having a psychosis finally, but exactly where he had that realization during the process, I'm not exactly sure. He initially had it, and he was going through this period from October of 1913 until the end of July 1914, when he was having very vivid dreams and very vivid visions. And at that point, he didn't know what it was. But when the war broke out, August the 1st of 1914, he said he was the happiest man in the world, because then he realized that it wasn't him that was the problem. It was society at large that was having this psychotic break in the form of World War One. So let's see. Nicholas says, not all people make it through like he did, though. Yes, I do understand that, and I agree with that. I'm not a mental health professional, so you should take anything I say about neurosis and psychosis with a grain of salt. And I would not be able to recognize what is actually a psychosis. So in any case, what I'm saying is just off the top of my head. And Nicholas, if you have better information about what might have been going on there, please feel free to enlighten us either today or some other time, because I don't claim to have infinite wisdom on this. And then Yaboy says that picture looks a lot like pictures I've seen of Atlantis. Well, that's interesting. I'm not sure which one you mean, whether it was the vision into eternity symbol or the yellow castle. But that is an interesting observation. Ranfan says usually Those with Jung's level of insight choose to stay quiet, but his writings were always in the context of psychoanalysis, which is really a replacement of Catholic confession for modernity. Okay, yeah, to a certain degree, I agree with that. And, you know, as it's applied to me, I can say that, you know, I can go either way. I understand the value of Catholic confession, and I think that what Jungian analysts do can amount to that in, you know, but I'm not saying that they perfectly overlap, but certainly Dr. Jung did observe that the great religions are all grand schemes of mental health. And that's kind of the way he said it. Yeah, Yahweh says his most mysterious quote to me in his interview is, "Oh, I don't need to believe, I know." And of course, a lot of people don't understand that. I had an epiphany when I heard that, because I said, "Oh, okay, I know too." So then I had to spend a decade figuring out what I know. And so if you'd like to hear what I think I know, based on what Dr. Jung said and what my own experiences have been, please take a look at my talk that I gave at the Unity Church last October called Finding the Living God, because Nietzsche had declared that God is dead. Nietzsche was a rationalist, and Dr. Jung came along in the next generation, found the living God, where he lives, and how he goes about doing the work of the Godhead. And I can explain all that, and have done in various venues on this channel. So I'm not going to go into that tonight in great detail, but I've done this one grand lecture that was done at the Unity Church in Annapolis, and it's called Finding the Living God. And so then Nicholas says, "Oh, not really about Chinese esotericism. I can appreciate the cultural dynamics a bit more and transpose to esoteric symbols to aid understanding, but my mental operating system is quite Western like yours." Okay. Not that mysterious if one considers that belief can be a barrier to experience. Surely it can be. Nicholas says, what Ronfan says, that's disturbingly true. Okay, I'm going to leave that. Yeah, but Yahweh says Plato's description of Annapolis, the castle, I think. Okay, I'm going to put that castle back up on the screen here for a minute while we work through that. Is this the symbol that you think is like Atlantis? Now, Run Fun, there, I've received a moderation of one of your chats, so let me just look at it. So many of the Western mysticism have cinephiles, i.e., China and Chinese cultural enthusiasts. Okay, let me pull that out. So Ranfan had said, so many of the Western mysticism lauders have been cinephiles, i.e., China and Chinese cultural enthusiasts. Okay, well, I wouldn't say that I'm a Chinese cultural enthusiast, and you know, I think that there if we're talking about mysticism as magic, then I'm not there at all. But if we're talking about Chinese mysticism as a process toward mental health, there is a lot of um, good Chinese stuff there, including the I Ching, which Richard Wilhelm had worked with. Okay, so that, I guess that's the Atlantis that you were talking about. And Nicholas says, laugh out loud about the Chinese culture enthusiast. I hope I even have any wisdom. Maybe Jung didn't make it through, as in make it back to sanity. Maybe he left and went all the way to the immanent source. Um, well, I think he made it back, but, and I do think he went pretty deep. Not many people have gone that deep. Nicholas says, never came back, but was back with us. Yeah. Okay. So Yahweh says that was the image that he was talking about vis-a-vis Atlantis. Yeah, Dr. Jung never came back. In 1944, he had a heart attack, and he had a couple of visions in connection with that heart attack as well. And he saw that everything was in place in his thinking. And as a result, he started to write like mad. And most of his very powerful but also controversial works were written after that time. And the reason that they're difficult is because he decided he didn't have time to go back and restate everything from the beginning of his work. So what he did was he just forged ahead and said, catch me if you can. And so after that time, he wrote Psychology and Alchemy. He wrote Ion. He wrote Answer to Job, and he wrote Mysterium Conjunctionis. And so all of those books are difficult to understand. Now, we've run a seminar in our advanced reading group on both Ion and Answer to Job, and Mysterium Conjunctionis. And so if you're a member of the advanced reading group, you can find the playbacks of those entire seminars. There's 32 sessions on Ion and 45 sessions on Mysterium Conjunctionis. And if you're not a member and you would like to become a member, you can write me at skip.conover@gmail.com, and I can add you to that Dropbox. We have a custom of a donation of $10 a month, which is quite reasonable considering I consider these seminars that I have run as graduate level seminars on these books. And, reasonable people can disagree, but I also haven't heard anybody say otherwise. So if you're interested in those, you can get those. Also, I've read Answer to Job in its entirety. You can find that on the homepage of this YouTube channel. And so, Nicholas, I do agree with you that he never came back. He broke through at the Red Book time. He recognized that as his prima materia, in other words, the material that he had pulled out of the chaos of the psyche that he needed to work on. And he worked on it through his life. And he just advanced thinking way ahead of theologians and many other people. And they're still not even starting to catch up, honestly. But fortunately for us, Edward Edinger, who was the leading Jungian analyst of the last half of the 20th century and was co-founder of the C.G. Jung Institute in New York. And he also lectured heavily on the West Coast, moved to Los Angeles at one point toward the end of his life after living in New York for quite a while. And Edinger was a medical doctor. He lived to be 76 years old. He worked with Edith Harding, who was the other co-founder of the C.G. Jung Institute in New York. And so he did, I don't know, 16 or 17 books on explaining how Jungian psychology fits together with Christianity. And I have a couple of them here at my fingertips because I often refer to them. One is The Bible and the Psyche, Introduction, Individuation, Symbolism in the Old Testament. And I've already read The Christian Archetype, which was another one. And I've read that into the channel, so you can listen to that here. And he also wrote The New God Image, a study of Jung's key letters concerning the evolution of the Western God image. And in that case, I've read all the 14 letters that Dr. Edinger was referring to into the channel, so they're readily available. And, if you're having trouble getting a handle on Jung, I urge you to go look at Edinger, and you will understand his religious perspective much better, including he did a book called The Ion Lectures and the Mysterium Lectures, and so on. So there are many Edinger books that are extremely valuable on this score, and we all have to start to get our minds around them. I mean, ultimately, the issue becomes, and I don't know if I have it. No, I guess I don't right here. But ultimately, the issue becomes a point that Dr. Jung made in one of these letters. Let me just see if I can find the letter. It was a letter to the Reverend Morton Kelsey, dated 3 May 1958. It begins on page 169 of this book. Now, the question is, can I find the quote that's in this book? Let's see. Guess I'm not finding the exact quote here. Oh, wait a minute, maybe I do. So here it is, and this is his fundamental issue with theologians of his day, and it's still an issue that applies today. And so he said this on page 170 of this book, which is this letter to Morton Kelsey, who also wrote a book. And Reverend Morton Kelsey was a theologian in California. And he said, "We are still looking back to the Pentecostal events in a dazed way instead of looking forward to the goal of the Spirit is leading us to." Okay, instead of looking forward to the goal the Spirit is leading us to. Therefore, mankind is wholly unprepared for the things to come. Man is compelled by divine forces to go forward to increasing consciousness and cognition, developing further and further away from his religious background because he does not understand it anymore. His religious teachers and leaders are still hypnotized by the beginnings of a new eon of consciousness instead of understanding them and their implications. What one once called the Holy Ghost is an impelling force, creating wider consciousness and responsibility, and thus enriched cognition. The real history of the world seems to be the progressive incarnation of the deity. Okay, so, um, I'm going to start working with this idea about where is the spirit moving us. And I would love to have um, some thoughts about that in the form of maybe in the form of an essay. I don't want to debate or interview someone. I want, if you're interested in this question and you have an idea about where the spirit is leading us, please put your ideas together, and then I will make um, space available for you on this channel so that you can present your idea of where the spirit is leading us, because that's the ultimate issue. And what he's referring to, the Pentecostal events, is the events of Pentecost, when uh, Christ is reportedly came back to the 12 disciples 40 days after he was crucified. And, you know, there's some thoughts about this, which I'm not going to get into, but the point is that theologians keep pointing back to that, or to various thought between then and now, instead of looking forward. And we have to start looking forward. Okay, so my wife has indicated that my time is up. So that was, I've been reading from the Red Book by C.G. Jung, um, Reader's Edition, and I've been reading, this has been the second installment of the essay entitled The Magician. There are 4 more to go. And so I will try to get those done in the next 4 or 5 days if I can. So anyway, thank you for being here tonight, and I'll talk to you again